Betsy and Thomas here for the American Intelligence Media. Today, this audio is not being posted on Vimeo, which is our backup channel, because this is Chelsea Clinton's platform, if you're not aware of it. We've written about that before. But anyway, they don't particularly care for our videos on coronavirus and money and all the things that we're outing. And, well, we're just not going to stop. So we had already set up our platform for this. We knew this day would come. So what you have here is you have an audio, and I provided you with a thumbnail. Now, you feel free to download this audio, use the thumbnail, put it anywhere you would like it on your own YouTube or your Vimeo channel. You probably won't get taken down like we would. But also, if you will subscribe to truthbits.blog, we always place our material there and send it out as a single post so it's easy for you to share. Today I've asked Thomas to join us and talk about some of the things that you haven't seen on the Cat Reports. It's so hard to put everything we need to put on the Cat Report. But this one, we want to focus in on the economy, because the stock market is a roller coaster ride right now, as well as the propaganda narrative that continues to come out about coronavirus. And now it looks like these two narratives are intertwined with one another. Thomas, what is going on?
The CDC is a private corporation. They make, last year, $4.1 billion off of their 56 patents, which are mostly vaccines and flu shots. They do not belong to the government. They are in no way a friend of the United States, and in no way a friend of we the people. Bill Gates gave them $100 million last year. That's okay, because every year we spend hundreds of millions on a fake flu shot. That is a flu that is from the long past, that will not happen this year, but will in fact kill people who get the shots. Now imagine, if you say anti-vax, that's called a hoax. So we have the CDC being protected as a corporation that kills people, that gives people Asperger's, that gives people autism.
A private company that has its own little court to settle these matters.
Completely immune. The CDC has its own vaccination court. That they've only allowed a few people ever to win cases, but there have been a few that won cases saying that they had counterindications to vaccinations that led to autism. But what we're dealing with here is the coronavirus is nothing more than this kind of big pharmaceutical scam. They find a virus, they isolate it, they claim they have a patent on a virus that happened perhaps as the interaction between people working too close with animals. This is where many of these coronaviruses come from. So they take it, they patent it, and then they create a vaccine, and then they spread the virus, and then they sell you the vaccine. It's real simple. Plus, in those vaccines are incredibly manipulated DNA, so that we can see that with the coronavirus, it has been proven now, and they're actually saying it. It just shocks me that any of these people from the CDC will actually now call it a retrovirus, because we're the first people who called it a retrovirus, and we called it out because of the research. And the research wouldn't even call it what it was, because it was an enzyme, furin, F-U-R-I-N, that causes any virus to become virulent and incredibly powerful, because it fools the human cell into thinking that it, the virus, is a human part of the human cell. And so this can only happen when you have manipulated in a laboratory the DNA of a virus so that it can become a retrovirus. Now, the problem is here, for the poor CDC and Pirbright Institute, who created some of these coronaviruses, and Merle PLC, which, Merle, I can't remember the exact name of the company, M-E-R-I-A-L.
No, that's correct.
Muriel.
Yeah.
I'm saying it wrong. Muriel.
Well, I don't know that you're saying it right, but
yeah.
Folks get it.
They're the ones who released it in China. They're the ones who have this active, specific number 19, ID 19 coronavirus. Now, mind you...
Now, wait a minute. That means that the Brits released it in China. That's like an act of war. What are they doing?
I believe that a company called Kinetic released it in Nanchang.
Well, Kinetic is the queen.
Correct. It is correct, absolutely. Because in Wuhan, where they tried to say it was spread... there's four places in China that take these patents of Pirbright and of Muriel, and work on them for biological warfare purposes, okay? So I'm sorry for them, but, if you're going to do this, it's just like I could go into great detail on other ones of these, but I don't want to scare people. But there have been numerous biological warfare experiments gone bad. Wuhan and the coronavirus 19 is not one of them. No, it was released on purpose to the largest group of people coming to eat a meal in human history.
Well, what about the
free.
layer of 5G that's also going on?
And then that, of course, activates it because that causes you to have oxygen deprivation and a lack of uptake of oxygen. Plus, it's cooking your organs from the inside out. Plus, they're just seeing how much it can break down anybody. So if 5G is killing people, but it's in the same area where they're saying coronavirus is killing people, and then they burn the bodies, well, who's to say? And as I predicted, it's now coming out that it's true that the Uyghur Muslims in the northwest of China, where they have created 1,000 concentration camps, have been, in fact, the coronavirus has been released to them in those prisons, and they say that it is so bad that they have released people with coronavirus back into their Uyghur Muslim communities to kill them.
Well, the Brits have been doing this for a long time, and that's what the AFI researchers have spent a lot of months on. We've taken this back now to the days where the British imperialists were going into South Africa with their little medical boxes to either disperse diseases that the indigenous people weren't, couldn't cope with, but also to take disease in their wee little medicine boxes that send it back to Britain to create bioweapons. And they've been doing it for a while. Now, one thing I noticed was Trump brought together this team, and this Anthony Fauci, really, I just want to call him, fucky, because he's turning out to be a big fuck. Look at him. He received a $100 million grant from Bill and Melinda Gates, who funded the coronavirus patent holder Pirbright Institute. He's mixed in with them. What the hell is he doing advising us on the coronavirus? He is a dirtbag.
He's a eugenicist. And to underscore what you just said, back in the turn of the century, in the early 1900s, when the Empire Press Union was getting going, it demonstrated that if you're going to have big pharma, where you're going to use it for eugenics and depopulation, which is even better than war, because, war is really messy, but, when you just go out and you can wipe out 60,000 people in the Transvaal, because Burroughs Wellcome was doing a vaccine experiment, well, then that's so much cleaner, especially when you already have the vaccination that stops it, but you don't give it to the people you inoculated the illness with. And that's what Bill Gates has done. And so we have to remember that the CDC is just like the Empire Press Union. And in that, it is like the big pharma that was behind and supported by the propaganda of the Empire Press Unions, because today's mainstream media, will not tell you what we just told you, and will knock you off of even alternative platforms because you are what they have deemed an anti-vaxxer. In other words, they say that's a hoax because you don't believe in the propaganda of the CDC, which is a private corporation that is supported 100% by the mainstream media.
And don't forget, who is at the top of that? Rod Rosenstein's sister. You gotta be kidding. Are you gonna trust the sister of Rod Rosenstein to give you instructions of what to inject in your child's bloodstream?
Rod Rosenstein's sister is in charge of the infectious diseases, what are often called ARD, but they're acute respiratory disorders, and that means flu. So every year, she is the person who decides who gets the hundreds of millions of dollars for the fake flu shot that kills as many people as it helps. And
no wonder Chuck Schumer wanted $8 billion, because it's going to be funneled and laundered right through the CDC to all their favorite people.
Correct. Well over. Now this is this part will get me upset if I start talking about it.
Pretty good deal for Bill Gates. He contributes $100 million, and then he gets $8 billion from Congress running through the CDC.
What can you do? You have testing kits, which are all crooked, by the way. You have masks, and you have something to wash your hands with. But we're going to spend $8 billion because $7.9 billion of it will go to the CDC to create a quick vaccine, which cannot be done You cannot create a quick vaccine. There is no such thing.
Yes, but with Anthony Fauci at the head, I'll bet you there'll be fast cures because he'll be working with Bill and Melinda Gates, and there'll be a way to disperse that $8 billion very quickly.
We heard them come out and lie and say that this new, never seen before, coronavirus ID number 19, which we know exactly how it was created, because of the ones that were before that. This is just nothing more than an experimentation that they thought would be extremely virulent, and then they turned it into a retrovirus. So what is truly happening here is just who gets the money for a vaccine that's already created. And let me just make this perfectly clear. It takes 7 to 8 years to make a vaccine, at the minimum. Minimum. They're saying they can do it in 45 days. That is a big friggin' lie. Now, another thing, Israel now says in 3 weeks they'll have a vaccine because they were working on a general coronavirus vaccine. Oh, just happened to be working on one that happens to work on coronavirus ID number 19. Impossible. Impossible. If there is any vaccine that they say they have for you, then it is a lie and it is laced with the same stuff that the original virus has in it. And that was, of course, disseminated on purpose, and it was disseminated through a gigantic, I forget what it was, 40,000 people or something came to a free meal in Wuhan. And then that's where the coronavirus broke out. And then for weeks they didn't tell anybody, and they don't want to admit. Now go ahead and try to find the evidence of that dinner. You won't find it anymore because they got busted and China removed it. This is an experiment for China. They're experimenting on their social credit system, on their facial recognition system, on whether they can quarantine people that they tag. They literally are tagging people so that the second they walk out of their house, they are arrested and put in prison.
Well, I think it's showing us that 5G is a big failure because look at what's happening to the human physical body in places where this 5G is running.
Yes, and they can't do this with the police state, Dragonfly, the social credit system in China, without 5G. And that's the reason that the very places, and this is, I haven't done a report on this, but it's real simple. Simply Google, where are the places that have the most outbreak of coronavirus? Then Google, where are the places that have the most 5G installed? You will find they're the exact same places.
Well, I want to tell you, I saw a map the other day where the 5G was being installed in different states. And as I looked at it, I saw that they were being concentrated in these urban areas. And in fact, in areas that I would consider to be lower income neighborhoods. Now, why would lower income neighborhoods be getting all the bells and whistles in 5G if 5G really isn't set up to be like a microwave oven to zap them all and just kill people right and left? These Gates, they are just nasty people, but they've been doing this for a long time. I mean, Bill Gates' parents were with Planned Parenthood. And another thing is, remember how Bill would always be running around talking about how vaccinations would help take care of population? And even as a young person listening to that, I'd go, how will vaccinations help with overpopulation? Well, of course, we now know because his vaccinations are killers.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're exactly right. The richest neighborhoods do not have 5G. The poorest do, but they can't afford...
Donald Trump's neighborhood down there in Mar-a-Lago, they don't have it.
Heck no. They were one of the first that appealed and won, and they said they're going to be ugly antennas, and we are going to choose the style and the look of it. And until we do, you can't install them, and they have yet to decide on the style and the look of it. Look at the way that they won that lawsuit.
But if you look in New York, they've got them all rolled out in Harlem.
Because it's depopulation, it's eugenics. And remember, think of this, folks, and I've already said this, and it's now been a proven fact, and I said it first. 5G is not going to sell. 5G in North and South Korea, where it has been installed, and by the way, where's there a lot of coronavirus? South Korea. The people aren't buying it.
Hey, look, you know who else isn't buying it? Is America. And we're not interested in your Five Eyes, Britain, because you've got that Huawei software in there. Did you see where Senator Cruz told Nigel Farage it was, that 4 eyes were better than 6 eyes? What did he mean by that?
Because it's funny that he said that. There's 5 eyes, and the 5 eyes are us, Britain, Canada, New Zealand, Australia, and he adds the sixth, which I always add, and I call it the sixth eye, Israel, because Israel is completely spying on all
no,
this.
but I took this to be China because that's who's going to be spying on us with this Huawei software.
I
Okay,
see.
so
That's
sorry.
funnier than heck. That's probably
so
what
what
he
he's saying, Thomas, is that look, we're not going to do this 5G stuff with Huawei. In fact, we also know that Five Eyes is a spying operation that's been going on a long time that spies on America for the Queen. And we got to end that relationship. But instead of just coming right out and telling the Queen to go take a hike, Donald Trump says, you know what, we don't want this Chinese software, or this Chinese hardware, because it's got this spying software. Well, that totally takes out Five Eyes. Now Five Eyes and the Brits have to decide, are you going to be aligned with China or the United States? And you be very careful how you make your decision. And these Tories, that I guess they have something on the table that they're going to make it so that after 2022, they won't have this equipment. Hey, darlings out there, by 2022, you'll all be nuked by these 5G systems.
Exactly. You will be zero population growth. That is going to be what happens in every single area where 5G is installed. They will see zero population growth. Fantastic difficulties with having children. But yes, unfortunately, and we told the whole world this, that sorry, Bojo, or whoever was going to come after Miss May, your Brexit deal isn't going to happen because of Five Eyes will not allow Huawei.
No,
we told everybody that.
America is not going to allow Five Eyes to use a Chinese spying operation on us.
That's right.
And in fact, while we're at it, we'd like to cut you Brits out of it too. I mean, you remember this. Did you have MI6 head Robert Hannigan coming over with John Brennan wiretapping Trump Tower?
Yeah.
I mean, what is all this about? And when is our media going to stand up and start calling this out? This is Senior Executive Service. It's Crown Agents. It's Purbright Institute. It's the Pilgrim Society, the Privy Council, the Queen. We are sick and tired. The people of this world are sick and tired of British imperial, what do we call it, fascist corporatism. They have been raping and pillaging the world for centuries. And folks, we have to join together and stop it. You just look at the way the British Empire has raped South Africa. Look what they've done. Look what they did to India. Look what they're doing to America. We have to stop them. And if it means dropping bombs on Windsor Castle, then so be it. Be strategic.
Truth bombs and love bombs, because here's the deal. Trump already took care of them. You see, let me explain this little simple domino effect that's going to happen. And he already knew this was going to happen because he already knew that Huawei had been completely installed, not only in Britain, but also the other eyes in New Zealand and Australia and Canada, and certainly in China and in America. And if it wasn't for Trump at the last minute stopping CFIUS from allowing Broadcom and Qualcomm to join together and then get the only contract to install land-based 5G, he stopped that at the last second. And he had days before, Hex said he had approved of it. Well, we had hammered on it saying, no. This is literally Richard C. Walker for Hillary Clinton coming back into the guise, working with the Chinese to have a fake company out of Singapore, which is a Hillary Chinese company. So he stopped it. At that moment, he knew, and he had to have known, because he had already removed all the Chinese capacitors and the Chinese microchips from all of our military and everything government already. First thing he did as soon as he came in. And because why? He saw the Chinese had taken over all aspects of our government. They had already hacked everything. They already had permanent systems in that were sending out the information. That is the reason that we know for a fact that the Chinese received every one of Hillary's emails. All of them. Not the 33,000 missing. All of them. Because she was sending them a courtesy copy because China had gone in and hacked it and done that. Okay, there was nothing the Chinese hadn't hacked. Nothing from the Office of Business Management.
But the best news is our intelligence agencies in America they don't know anything. All they do is push out propaganda and lies. So all the stuff they picked up through Hillary's emails were probably no good.
Now, what Trump is doing is he knew this would happen. And what did he say? Oh, we'll do a great deal with you once you get out. He wanted the Brexit because it destroys the European Union, which is Soros-controlled, period. 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 George Soros is the European Union, period. They are now paying him $26 billion a year for him to gauge how many people he will release from North Africa into Europe.
It's hostage money. He's holding Europe hostage.
Absolutely. So what happened? Trump said, too bad. So we're not going to do a good deal with Britain. We can't. They can't pull out of their 5G. They've already sold out to China. They had to take China down. That's the reason they had to release the coronavirus, to stop the nonsense in Hong Kong, because it was stealing their assets there, to stop what was going on in Shanghai, to stop what was going on with the tariff battle with America, because we were winning too big. So Britain needed to take down China. So why? So they could be on a more level playing field, because they knew that if they couldn't get a deal with America as long as they were with Huawei. So they went with China. So Bojo's already decided,
so
folks.
they've already made. So what do we say to our British patriot friends out there? Because, you know, when we are so harsh, we're talking about the British monarch, your swamp, folks. We're talking about your swamp. We want to help you. I mean, what are people in Europe, the real patriots, what are they going to do?
It looks as if Britain has already lost the battle. There is no free speech there. There is no free anything. You can't walk on the street without perhaps having acid thrown in your face, stabbed to death by a gang, raped. Certainly your children are going to be raped. And right now, death and murder in London is worse than death and murder in New York City.
And frankly, America's tired of fighting wars for everybody around the world, and we're zipping up the gates here.
And that's the whole thing. Trump said, yeah, go for Brexit. He gets out. He no longer has a good deal with Europe. He no longer has a good deal with America. So what did Britain do? They attacked China so that they would bring China down to a level playing field. Why? Because Russia and China are practically one country now. They do all their military stuff together. All their oil is together. Their uranium is together. Their nuclear weapons are all together. They are working together hand in glove. Well, what drives the Russian economy right now? Nord Stream 1, which is the pipeline that came into Germany and was lied about by Angela Merkel. What was the first thing Trump said when he went to Europe? Nord Stream 1. We were the only ones screaming about Nord Stream 1. He goes there and completely blows them out of the water.
Yeah.
And then they all promised to pay up for NATO.
And they still
didn't.
No.
And then they started their own standing army with Germany and France. Yes. And Nord Stream 2 was 1 inch away from being finished, which would again be another stab in the back of Angela Merkel to the European Union. Well, Trump isn't going to do business with these kind of corrupt people, so he had to disrupt them.
But what happens to Britain? Here they are. They've chosen China because they have selected Huawei system, but yet they go over and poison the Chinese with this coronavirus. I mean, you can't have it both ways. What happens if the Chinese find out what the Brits have been doing?
Well, you see, the Chinese are extraordinarily naive to industrial espionage, to basically capitalism that kills you. They're totalitarians. They don't even have to have good reason for what they do. They kill anybody they want. Capitalists in China that made a lot of money in either of the big, any of the 3 stock markets over there in the East, what happened? They were murdered. And their assets were then absorbed back into the collective, into the Chinese Totalitarian Communist Committee. Yes. So you're never, ever going to win with them. So the Brits know that. They've never won with them. They've been trying to win against them forever. The only one who's ever won against China, Trump. And even then, Trump knows he can't believe the tariff deal he did with them because they're liars. They've never, ever followed through on anything in history.
Okay, but we have other things that are happening. And I want to talk about those next because they're all related. Let's talk about the stock market.
Well, yes.
I want to talk about the stock market. Now, we don't post a lot, folks, about financial news on the Cat Report because, frankly, when I read articles, they'll be so filled with propaganda. If I put them there, I can't sort through that for the average reader. And then the other thing is you got others that are just trying to push their gold and silver. And, you know, it's just a mess. But now we're seeing a definite pattern. The stock market goes up, and then everybody yells about coronavirus. You see pictures all over the internet, and then the market comes down for a day. Then it goes back up, Same thing, and it comes down for a day. What's going on?
The central banks that own 1/3 of their assets in stock markets can't make money unless it drops and rises. And the reason it drops and rises such huge amounts is because they need to make up for the lost time, because they took 1/3 of their assets from the U.S. Fed supported central banks of America, which then loan money to all the other banks and create the LIBOR rate. They've never in history bought stock market bonds, stock market shares. So they did. 1/3 of the stock market's owned by central banks. That's insane. Never happened. They have to get out. The only way they can get out is to have high frequency traders, people who put up, a $5 billion, I think it's $5 billion ceiling that you have to have in cash, so that when you make a trade that the DTCC does not, the depositor, it's the clearing corporation for, let me just explain it that way, the clearing corporation for the stock market gives them automatic approval for everything they sell and buy. So they can sell, and before anyone else can buy, they can buy back their own stocks. They can create plunges. They can create markets. They can actually create up and down movement that doesn't exist, that actually no one is buying anything. They're just digits that appear for nanoseconds before then they are manipulated. These are high-frequency traders, and they work directly with manipulating the stock market. Now, why have they not done much before? Because Trump knows all about this, and he put Mnuchin in charge of the U.S. Treasury. And what did Mnuchin do? He said, show me the gold in Fort Knox. Show me the gold in the U.S. Federal Reserve. What's this with the gold? Now, I'm going to jump all over here, but you have to understand this.
Well, wait a minute. I do remember that visit. It was several years ago when he first got on board. He went over to Fort Knox to check. But I believe the article said that he indicated all the gold was there.
And he didn't look at all of it. He looked at one room. Yes, that's my point. He did that to scare people. And people don't understand there's a thing called the plunge protection team that actually can turn off the stock market at any moment. So if it's plunging, they can pull the plug from the U.S. Treasury. Okay? And then there are other U.S. Treasury funds that are used for currency control. Now, the fact that we only recently dropped another 0.5% because Jerome Powell, the head of the U.S. Fed, finally crumpled underneath Trump's pressure because he was basically calling him an enemy of America. And that's going to indicate to people that the U.S. Fed is not U.S., it is not federal, does not have reserves, and it's owned by the same banking families that started in 1913 under different names. He knows that full well. He also knows he has the control. He also knows that he has certain mechanisms that can control the stock market. He also knows that at the end of the day, the Treasury can buy and sell to shore things up, and they can also buy and sell bonds at the end of the day or at the beginning of the day before anybody else has the right to, before it even comes online. So it is a myth to think that the U.S. Fed controls this, but every time the Fed comes out and says, oh no, stock market consumer confidence is down because of coronavirus, lie. And if that were the case, that the U.S. Fed, first off, whose statistics are almost always lies, so don't believe them. Only believe statistics from the U.S. Treasury. The U.S. Fed's statistics are to manipulate markets, period. Now, they have to manipulate markets because they put 1/3 of their assets into the market. That's the reason it went up, 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 up. So when they sell, they get more money back than it was that they put into it.
Let me explain this in another way. You guys out there remember in 2001 and 8, where the stock market crashed, but all the fat cats were there ready to buy up at the cheap end? And who were the suckers? That was all of us out here, regular Americans, who thought that it was crashing, so we sold. Well, when it happened in 2001, that was too bad. And then it happened again in 2008. Well, we're seeing a pattern, and we see that happening right now. Are they doing that so that regular folks sell, so that these fat cat bankers can come in and buy on the cheap side? Because if that's the case, you might want to think about buying the dips.
Oh, buy the dip.
Well, we aren't going to give financial advice, but we are old folks, and we are seeing a trend.
It's a casino, get out. But if you're staying in, buy the dip, because it's going to keep dipping and going up and down until, believe it or not, the election. and a little bit beyond.
But if regular folks do that, then what are the bankers going to do? How are they going to keep propping up their system?
Well, remember, the bankers don't give you any money when you give them your money. Why is that? Because they're bankrupt because of fractional banking. And they've loaned out more money than they can call back, and then they put it into bundled mortgages. They put it into insane stuff that they can't manipulate or control anymore because high-frequency traders control the markets, creating markets and destroying markets, not bankers, not your 401k investors. You can't get your investor for your 401k to break out any information and where your money is at any one moment because nobody knows anymore. It's so bundled together that literally there is no reason for stockbrokers anymore. Literally, that's the reason there are so few people on the floor of the Wall Street stock market, because it's all high-frequency traders who control it. And the reason we always have big gains and big losses is because when the high-frequency traders decide to push the button, that's what happens. Don't sell if you're in. Remember, when you sold out before, when the stock market crashed, if you would have waited a few years, it came right back to where it was, and now it's far beyond. It's actually a third higher than it ever was. So the point is...
And again, don't take our advice on anything about financial. We're just giving you our opinion.
Yeah, this is just, we're telling you about what happens in Las Vegas. You see, what happens in Las Vegas stays in Las Vegas. And what happens in Wall Street stays in Wall Street, because the hedge fund managers, you might as well call them tax evaders. They don't pay taxes, folks. They're offshore accounts. They move the money in and out. So at the end of the year, they have great losses, and they actually get tax discounts, though they made billions of dollars during the year. It's absolutely disgusting. $1.6 quadrillion goes down in the stock market without any taxes being paid on it.
Okay, so next thing is
I'm not done. So,
well, I'm not either.
Powell.
But what about this offshore account you just talked about? What happens to those offshore accounts when the Federal Reserve fiat currency crashes and is no longer there? Who's going to honor all that money that's sitting in offshore accounts?
Don't forget that the U.S. Treasury and the U.S. Fed helps money leave this country without taxes.
Yeah, talk about that.
Yeah, well, the remittances to
Mexico. They just go to a Federal Reserve window, transfer their money down to Mexico without any taxes being paid, folks.
And yet the Treasury and the Federal Reserve, who both have these working on a massive level, they get their percent.
Oh, yeah. They get, because
they get
anytime money moves, there's a little troll right there to take a cut.
Pretty much guaranteed that most of this remittance money, probably 75 to 85% of it, is from illegal aliens. So they don't even have to use a bank. They don't even have to have an ID. They can remit money out of this country without paying taxes on it, being illegal aliens, perfectly legally supported by the U.S. Federal Reserve.
Well, that's what PayPal is for. That's how we move money around all over the world to avoid taxes.
Now, we do the same thing because we have... when we went off the gold standard, there was this slush fund that was created. And we use that slush fund anytime we want, the U.S. Treasury. And we can buy and sell whatever we want to manipulate whatever we want. But the Fed is doing it worse than ever, because it used to be the following. The Fed would determine the central banks, the LIBOR rate, the rate that they would loan money to normal banks. Then that would determine how much the banks would give us when we put our money into the bank, or how much money they had to loan out to people who might want to speculate on the stock market, buy real estate, which ends up in the stock market. Most real estate ends up in bundled packages through MERS, MERS, on the stock market. I'm not going to go into that. But the point is, so the banks used to give out money that could then go into the system. No. The banks are fractional banking. I don't even know that they have a low limit. It used to be 10%. I think it's much less than that now. Don't quote me on that. But let's say that 90% of their money that goes in, they loan out to make money on real estate, on whatever, their investments. But if the investments aren't going well, like they weren't during the Obama rate, zero interest rates, and the Fed is saying, I'm going to keep the U.S. dollar strong and keep gold out of the system, then everything was fine for Obama, except it didn't grow. But then when Trump comes in, what do? raise it 9 times. They raised the interest rate 9 times in a short period of time. That was an attack against us, folks. That should have been considered a national security attack against our economy. And every time they open their mouth, that's what's going on. So when they're talking about gold manipulation, because the World Bank wants to say that the International Monetary Fund is going to accept Russia and China because if they have a gold-backed currency, and so China literally invents gold. They create fake gold and start selling it all over the world and start trading gold so that the real gold comes to them and the counterfeit gold goes out. Russia starts buying gold at the biggest rate that they possibly can, and then they get completely screwed in the IMF.
But we think, because you predicted way back when, and one of our readers brought it to our attention again, that you had said in March 2020 there would be this economic crisis, and we see it wrapped up with coronavirus. That is really to help us with the narrative, don't let a good crisis go to waste. So we can use coronavirus to help us move this market up and down with all the fear that's out there. Now, let's look. Why did you say March 2020 would be the time they would really try to take this down?
Well, if you look in the evening sky, you're going to see Saturn, Jupiter, Mars. You saw Venus right there with the moon recently also. And then far, far out, you can't see Pluto. So right now, you have Mars coming up to trigger these planets. When Jupiter and Saturn were together, what did we see? We got to see that they were going after Trump. They thought they were going to take Trump down. They thought they were going to impeach him. What happened? It reversed. It's the opposite. And the very people who went after him have lost all last speck of credibility they ever had, the demon rats. So that was when Mars went over Jupiter, Saturn. Now, here's the problem. Jupiter and Saturn are going to keep playing this game where they're catching up with each other and coming to the same spot in Capricorn, late Capricorn. And then Mars is going to hit Pluto, with Jupiter and Saturn also getting triggered.
Do we know what date?
On the exact date of March 22nd.
All right, March 22nd is the date we should be. Whew.
Yes. In and around that date, a few days before and after that, when Mars hits Pluto, because it's been agitated by Jupiter and Saturn going back and forth, and Mars just went over it. Now Mars is going to go over Pluto, but it's also going to have Jupiter and Saturn affecting it. Okay, Jupiter could be considered the stock market, money, your home, big expansion, big things. And Saturn, that's the boss. That's Trump. That's Schumer. That's Pelosi. That's the boss. Whoever the big boss of their thing is, that's the boss. So now you got Jupiter, Saturn. They thought they were going to win. And they had Mars, so they thought they were just going to railroad this thing through, and with their power and their authority, they were just going to pronounce this, and because John Roberts is a scumbag who should have thrown it out of the Senate because there were no crimes, and because they allowed them to break every single rule concerning impeachment in the House without anybody doing anything, no ethics committee investigations.
And his wife, Jane Sullivan Roberts, is as much a scumbag as her husband. I just have to get that in.
No sanctioning,
Just
nothing of
awful
any
people.
of these authorities. And then what happens to Trump? Well, it looks like, Trump going down. It looks like Joe Biden and Bernie and Elizabeth Warren and everybody in the Democratic Party is going to win. Remember when they did the polls and they said every one of their candidates was going to win against Trump?
Yeah.
Or the top 10 or whatever it was. Every one of them. Now, we got to see the statistics from the primaries. We saw that, no, even if everyone voting for all Democrats voted, they would still be beaten by Trump. And nobody, as a Republican, even goes out for the primary when there's only one candidate.
No.
So that just shows you there's going to be a landslide.
Yeah, but we don't want anybody to get complacent. So everybody get out there. But the thing is that Biden, they finally settled on him because they got to hold on to the House. If they don't hold on to the House, and what that means is if so many of us come out for Trump and we vote the way Trump instructs us to, because on this last election, Trump selected 20 candidates and recommended them. Those 20 candidates won. That's what patriots need. We are in a war, folks. Trump is the general. We're following him. Follow Trump's instructions. We've got to get through this election so that we own the House and the Senate, the presidency, and we can take the senior executive services and throw them out in the ocean.
We have not seen the George Soros money come out yet.
Oh, you're kidding.
I mean, not in the big way that we saw before. $84 billion donated just a few years ago, right before the 2018 election. And every single Secretary of State in every single state that he wanted the vote to be manipulated was given infinite money. And super PACs came out and supported these people on a massive level. We have yet to see that. Now, if Joe Biden is the selected candidate, because I don't know what's going to happen. Hillary becomes his vice president. Stacey Abrams becomes... Whatever. If Joe Biden is the globalist candidate...
Oh, they'll take him out on the 25th.
That's insane.
Yeah, no, they could take him out on the 25th Amendment in 2 months.
He's done.
Plus any other way they want to take him out. So he's just a fool.
And yes, and the company that has come out to... They now have, Ron Johnson, the Senator, chairman of the Homeland Security Committee, has already gotten Blue Star, Blue Star Strategies. They know for a fact that this Washington, D.C. company, directly connected to the Bidens, directly connected to the Obamas and Clintons, went to Ukraine and literally started a campaign.
Blue Star Strategies, didn't we see that in our uncovering associated with Pirbright? Wasn't that Blue Star Strategies?
Blue Star Strategy is the number one lobbying company for the globalist corrupt swamp people in D.C. And yes, they get, every time you turn around, them and the new Democrat slush fund, I forget the name of it, they work together, infinite money. But what we have not seen is that George Soros hasn't chosen a candidate. Now, I believe that is only because of one reason, and that's that the Democrats, no matter what, George Soros knows none of them can win. Because he didn't support. We haven't seen the support. We actually hear that the Democratic National Committee is sucking wind. They don't have the money that they need. Bernie raised more money than all the rest of them, and now Bernie, of course,
maybe George Soros is going to have to sit this one out. Maybe he's been immobilized.
I want to point something out with the Democrat primaries to demonstrate that they are absolutely fraud. Every single primary, the devices they used didn't work, but then on Super Tuesday they worked just fine. Isn't that funny? Uh-huh. They never worked the bugs out. They don't even have an accurate IO account. So how is it that the same system was used all over in many states on Super Tuesday, and Joe Biden, who can't get a gym, 20 people in a high school gym, and then when he does, he argues at them, cusses at them, derides them, sniffs their hair, and is the most disgusting candidate ever, and always has been, by the way. And by the way, he thinks he's running for Senate, and he doesn't know where he is. He has dementia, and it's so obvious. Why? Why could that be that anyone who's a Democrat who was voting for Bernie, which is most of them, because Bernie has been gathering tens of thousands of people.
Bernie's base is energized because AOC and Omar and the squad have been out there energizing these young radicals.
But now,
and when Bernie gets elected, they'll be taking it over, and Bernie will be history too. Everybody's using somebody to get somewhere.
Bernie is a 60s communist on his last leg. His heart's given out. His Soros money is so stacked so high that expect him after the very next, there'll be probably one more primary, and then he will drop out. Why? Then he will take his untold amounts of money and continue to use it to remain a senator. Now remember, he is the joke in the Senate. When you say the Senate of the United States of America, and you say Bernie Sanders' name, everyone laughs. But Bernie, because he has given everyone the promise, everything that they want he's going to give them, that can only be done through totalitarian communism or through absolute fascist socialism. So unless Bernie, and by the way, listen to what he's saying, folks, he's going to do this. There are no laws to provide him the ability to do the things he's promised. It's not possible. It's psychotic. It's like the Green New Deal. And none of the Bernie voters are going to vote for Biden.
Okay.
Mark my word.
Shift those gears and let's move on to your next favorite subject this morning.
Wait, I want to go back.
Paul Singer.
Wait.
Twitter, social media.
Yes, but I want to go back. Jerome Powell allowed China to threaten the world with the gold-backed yuan. And did nothing to protect our currency. And then Russia came out and said they were going to have a gold-backed ruble. Why? They were going to use the counterfeit gold exactly like China. Of course Jerome Powell knew it was counterfeit because everyone knew it was counterfeit. And he also knows that the gold, the only place that you can buy and sell gold in Shanghai, in Nova Scotia, and in London, the city of London, that's all fake gold. Nobody gets any physical gold off of any of that. So what did Jerome Powell do? He took all of the gold that was sent to us for debts from banks like Deutsche Bank and USB and HSBC, and he sent them gold that didn't belong to them. In other words, to make certain that the U.S. would not go to a gold-backed system, Jerome Powell weakened the dollar, weakened the gold, so there would be no gold-backed dollar or any what was planned.
He do that? How could he get permission to release the gold?
Because he's the U.S. Fed. The U.S. Fed moves the gold every day.
Powell can move that?
Yes.
That's not right, because the Federal Reserve is not a government institution.
Correct.
We have a contract with the Fed to basically print our money and help us make the market stable. That's anything but what they've done. They have printed irresponsibly way too much money. We're in an inflation state, and you can see that inflation in the stock market, in medical care, and in the grocery store. Okay? That's what's happened.
The U.S. Treasury is the only group that can control our currency. We need
to take that away from them. They've done a piss poor job.
The U.S. Treasury gives that authority on a regular basis every few years through congressional support and a vote, again, to the U.S. Fed. We do not have to give the Fed the money they demand every 4 or 5 years. They come and they'll demand $10 billion for their operations.
Since Congress won't do what it's supposed to do, audit the Fed and shut it down and give our money and the control of the money back to the U.S. Treasury, where it's sound money, well, fine, then just let them go and crash the system.
This is what I'm saying. Trump knows this. In his second term, he's going to push on the Fed until the Fed is dissolved. We do not owe $20 trillion to the Fed. That is odious debt created by an inability to ever repay the debt. Therefore, it is a fraud. We don't owe it to them. The central banks. Okay, first off, we don't care what the central banks do. We don't need the central banks. We can set our own rates. We can set our own fractional loan banking rates. We can stop the Bank for International Settlement and Derivatives. Derivatives could kill all economies in the world overnight, and almost have a few times with Deutsche Bank threatening that they were going to go bankrupt. Deutsche Bank is one of the 5 or 6 biggest rogue CIA banks. Their gold came from, well, I'm not going to get into it, from the rogue CIA. Anyway, and that's the gold that Powell just shipped back to them. It's like the gold that went to the Bank for International Settlement that was being held for Hitler, that then they kept, as well as the gold that Hitler took from the teeth of the Jews that the Bank for International Settlement kept, and only in the last decade, they had to give that money back because the Bronfman family, representing the Jews, sued them. Well, guess what? There's not a dime in the Bank for International Settlement that's theirs, and they control whether or not they will clear these huge bank bets. And the derivative bets are more than all of the currency and all the money in the whole world right now. So that has to end. And when Trump finally gets control and gets rid of the Fed, the U.S. stock market will simply be taken out of the control of a corporation that is making money off of it. You could turn it into a non-casino investment group.
Like back in the old days when you bought a stock and you got a certificate.
Yes, with paper.
And there weren't all the derivatives. What it's like, folks, is you got a bunch of people go out to a car lot. They say, okay, we want that car right there. And everybody's putting the same money down on the same car. At the end of the day, they come back to get the keys, and there's only one set of keys. But there were 100 buyers for the car and only one set of keys. Only one person's going to get that bar of gold, that car. And that's what derivatives do. It lessens the value of your asset. And in the end, there can be only one holder of that asset.
For instance, the gold bullion vault in the city of London, which is the Rothschild original gold that created the fraud that started the bank. Well, it controlled the Bank of England and controlled the British currency. Okay, 36,000 fake paper notes are drawn on every ounce of gold in that vault. In other words, fractional gold investment, same like fractional banking investment, same like all the fractional. It's just like the stock market. I mean, a lot of these people are buying and selling with money that doesn't even exist. It's just digits, and especially the high-frequency traders. Yes, they put $5 billion down, but they can do a $10 billion deal. And they can make $5 billion off the deal because they bought and sold to themselves within nanoseconds when nobody else can get in. This is the shill of all shills. The company that owns the stock market said they were going to sell it in 2017 as soon as Hillary came to power, which is really interesting. Why? Because it was going to crash.
Okay, then you got the coronavirus narrative raging, and now the social media networks are shutting people down right and left. But let's focus in on Paul Singer. Good guy or bad guy? He wants to come in and buy Twitter, send Jack Dorsey to Africa. He's probably going to meet up with Bill Gates, and they're just going to vaccinate and kill a bunch of Africans.
Yeah, well, he's as evil as it gets.
Who? Singer or Gates or both?
Both. And Singer is the propaganda arm for people like Gates, because the Washington Free Beacon, let's remember the other name for what beacon isn't just a lighthouse, it's also the name for a retarded person. And in fact, that's what he is. He plays like he's a Republican. He's on all the big conservative Republican groups, and he is indeed a Democrat. He is a full-on globalist, preferably Democrat. Now, why do we know this? Read the Washington Free Beacon. It is garbage.
It is a garbage place.
It is
total
nothing.
Garbage. I got
no
rid
news,
of that a long time ago.
All garbage, all propaganda,
but
all
here's
Democrat.
the thing. Paul Singer is known for buying up companies and then crashing them, just like Mitt Romney and Bain Capital. And the other thing, so he could just buy it and crash Twitter. Or the other thing is he could buy it and then on a strategically appointed day, just knock Trump's Twitter off.
Well, it'll be just like Washington Post. It'll just simply go out of business unless it has infusion capital. Why? Because he will turn it into a site no one wants to go to. Can he do this to Trump? Well, we'll talk about the bigger picture here and the squelching of free speech in a moment, but let's talk about Paul Singer. Paul Singer is the person who came forward first when it was found and when the dossier was revealed to be paid for by Hillary Clinton's victory campaign and the Democratic National Committee. They paid for it, over $12 million for Mark Elias to work through Perkins Coie to work with Fusion GPS to create opposition research. Well, when that first hit the news, Paul Singer came out and said, no. I paid for it. I paid for it early on because I wanted Cruz and other people, and so I paid for opposition research against Trump to be done. This is true. He did. But it's a lie. It's true because if you look at the WikiLeaks, you'll see that the DNC had already done huge amount of opposition research on Trump, and they had the file there. You can read it. They found nothing. So when that happened, and then Hillary, at the same exact time that they came up with the results that was paid for by Paul Singer. Okay, so when Paul Singer said he paid for opposition research, he did. But he paid for it for Hillary through Fusion GPS. And I've said all along, the second that we get their bank records, we'll see all of this and we'll see who the real corrupt people are, and we'll see that these lobbyist groups are just propaganda groups, just like Reuters, Thompson, or the Associated Press or the mainstream media. So Paul Singer said, I paid for it. I paid for that opposition research. I paid for the Steele dossier. And then another conservative came out and said that he did too. And then the two of them argued about who paid for it. They didn't pay for that particular aspect of it because that came second. They paid for the Democrats getting opposition research. Which they did it for, first off, Paul Singer did it for Republicans because they hated Trump. And then they gave that research they paid for to the DNC. But there was nothing in it. So the DNC had to then pay all that money I just talked about to get a fake dossier because Cody Shearer and what's the guy's name? Blumenthal, what's his guy?
Sidney, the other Blumenthal.
Sidney Blumenthal.
No, Sidney Blumenthal. Is it? Yeah, Sidney Blumenthal.
Sidney Blumenthal and
Cody Shearer?
Cody Shearer had already written opposition research garbage exactly like that. Okay? 2 or 3 times for Hillary and for Bill. So it's not, this is their standard operating procedure. So Paul Singer he's not a Republican, he's not a conservative, he is a globalist, and he is 100% a George Soros man, faking it. He's like a Mitt Romney. He's a rhino, but just as bad as Mitt Romney. Romney is the worst of globalists, and every time Romney opens his mouth, it's to cover his own ass for Burisma, for his own guy, Kofor Black, being there. That's the reason he's trying to defend the Ukrainian thing and voted against the first article of impeachment, and that's the reason he came out and he keeps saying these horrible things. Every time Mitt Romney opens his mouth, all you have to do is say, let's see now, what does Mitt have to do with that? And in every case, Mitt is only there to protect himself. Now, we told you why Mitt went to D.C. He was going to run in the primaries against Trump. But when Trump had smashed him down so bad beforehand, he knew he had no chance. So now he knows he's going to be recalled. He knows he's going to be voted out. And he's working hard to make sure that happens because he only wanted to be president, not a senator, because he doesn't have enough power to be as corrupt as he needs to be. Plus, the man is a billionaire. He isn't making money as a senator, okay? That's stupid. It's there for power and influence, and it's there to take the place of John McCain. So, why are they buying Twitter? Because they intend, they've already started, they've knocked off ads for Trump, knocked off ads for Biden, one ad for Biden, a couple ads for Bernie, right? To show that they are absolutely just in the way that they do this. No. George Soros already paid for the device through the Digital Forensic Laboratory, which is already being used on Facebook. It's being used on Twitter. It's being used everywhere. And it red flags anything George Soros doesn't like, period. If you're not part of open society, open borders, and capitalism, globalism based upon predatory capitalism, then George Soros isn't for you. And none of those groups are, because that's who gave the money. The Atlantic Council gave $1.5 billion, and George Soros gave $1.5 billion. And Eric Schmidt previously gave a ton of money, but he's trying to be a little bit more careful this time. So, Singer, that is the last-ditch attempt. They put all their bullets in their gun, and they're shooting all of them, and they're going to run out of bullets by March 22nd. And on March 22nd, mark my words, Joe Biden will go down.
Really? You think so?
Mark my words, because
what do
he's
you
a
mean by
plutocrat.
Because he's a Pluto, and Mars is hitting Pluto?
Yeah, he's a plutocrat.
But how will that happen?
Well, his son will be found. The State Department said this was a conflict of interest. He will at least be charged with conflict of interest, and his son will be charged with interference.
But this could be exactly what Hillary wants. So she could come in
strategy.
She could come in and save the day.
Yes. And this is where I really was headed.
Oh my gosh.
In the end, this is all the plan. And that's the reason I'm telling you, George Soros hasn't even put up his money yet.
He's still going to back Hillary?
He has to see if Hillary's going to make it. Because Hillary owes him so much money. Hillary owes all those. Hillary got 125 foreign countries to give her money to her foundation, and then she gave them weapons.
They
or
probably
a contract,
told her she better
USAID.
run and she better win, or she's going to be Arkansas.
Correct. So, are they going to throw Joe under the bus? Possibly. No, that isn't what they're attempting to do. They think they can get out of this. That's the reason. The number one thing fighting the Homeland Security Committee and Ron Johnson looking into Blue Star strategies is, the George Soros paid for anti-corruption group that took over Yananovich, the ambassador, who took over her office and ran the George Soros anti-corruption fake reporting group, which is a non-GMO, which is a non-government organization, an NGO. And what happened? They were running Ukraine, and George Soros said, "I'm going to give to NAFCO, the largest oil company, $1 billion point something, just for fun money, as long as you put me on the board." And then in the second year, he literally says, "I'm going to make back double." Well, guess what? He only recently went on that board. So George Soros thinks he has complete control of Ukraine right now. Well, he doesn't. And so we don't know what's going to happen. At this point, mark the words, beginning a day or two before, March 22nd, and continuing all the way to November.
Long?
Yes, all
You
throughout
mean
through the
from
election.
March through the election, we are going to have this huge upheaval?
Yes, and the Democrats are going to continue to go down, 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 the demon rats.
Well, this is what war looks like at the end when the other team is lost. I mean, it's just not like in the movies where the war is over and everybody goes home. I mean, you eventually find out about it in your various pockets. And
Hitler, in his bunker, on his dying moments, sent the Hitler Youth to fight the liberating Allied army with nothing but pocket knives, because their other knives had already been used. They had pocket knives, so they literally confronted Hitler Youth while Hitler the coward was in his bunker. And that's what the Democrats are. They're using every bullet, every person. They're throwing everyone under the bus. They don't care as long as they get to that convention and they nominate Hillary, and that Hillary does in the election through the rigged election machines and through the illegal aliens voting, 22 million of them, folks. That's how many we know that are there. I tell you, there's more like 40 million. And of course she's going to win in any place where the illegal aliens are, right? And where there's sanctuary cities. That's the reason Trump came out and said he's going after sanctuary cities. That's the reason that they're arresting people. ICE are arresting people before they get to their court case and deporting them, okay? Scaring the heck out of all the voters. We're getting to see that even the gerrymandering of Eric Holder didn't work. They reversed most of the gerrymandering. We see that the border is keeping out 92% of the people crossing in the last month's records. Okay? Trump is winning on all those, but now from the time that they started to attack him, which was literally from August 21st when that eclipse happened, because it happened directly on his ascendant, and he has a major planet there, we said, oh, they're going to try to burn him with flamethrowers. And as a phoenix, the phoenix bird loves flames.
oh yeah,
He loves the flames.
Yeah.
The more they attack him, look, who has won in an attack against him?
well, especially
No
because
one.
he knows the truth of what's going on.
That's why. And so what's going to happen is the Dems are going to use every speck of ammo they have. They're going to shoot at him again. They'll try to impeach him again. They'll try everything they can until they lose so bad, because they know they're going to lose. Because they know that, unfortunately, remember 17 undecided cases where they simply kept producing more and more ballots for the Democrats. If you look at those contested races, 17 of them, the Dems won all of them by harvesting ballots. Okay? That ain't going to happen this time. And Stacey Abrams, no matter how much you scream that you're black and you're a woman, that don't mean nothing, because you didn't get hardly any votes, no matter even when Deval Patrick came down to help you, and even when Obama came to help you, and even when Sharpton came to help you, and everybody came to help you. You are not going to be the vice president because you don't have a single speck of intelligence in your brain.
Okay,
I
let's
don't
wrap it
like
up.
you.
All right.
And you screaming that it is your right, that it is, in fact...
Look, she's a know-nothing. Let's not...
That's all they have.
Okay, that's it. So, folks, sit back and know that Betsy and Thomas, we're here with you the whole way. You might have to go over to truthbits.blog to pick up our videos, but we're not stopping.